Change control. The change control process ensures that each change proposed is properly defined, considered, and approved before implementation. And this is an important process because it helps us make sure that those changes are given enough thought and they are approved before they are implemented. That way we can make sure that the change is going to be providing some benefit to the project. The cost of changes increases as the project makes progress, and the impact of those changes will lessen. Here's the chart that explains how the impact of changes is high at the beginning of the project but goes down. The idea behind that is that you can make a lot of good changes at the beginning that will be then implemented by the project later so that you can be able to see those benefits. But later in the project, right here, any changes, they will have little impact, and because there's been already a lot of work done. But the other curve that is also interesting is the cost of changes. At the very early stages of the project, making those changes doesn't mean much because there hasn't been much work done. But later in the project, right around here, if you make any changes, they're going to be expensive because there's been a lot of work already invested. There is a lot of things that will need to be rebuilt or redone, and that means that will require a lot of cost. So it's important to understand that relationship. Ideally, most of the changes will happen around this period of time when the costs are not that significant and you have a good impact. They don't happen here because those changes, you don't have much information about what are the conditions in the project or changes in the context. You're going to start getting more information when you are maybe 2/3 into the project, and then you have a better sense. That's when you start seeing opportunities for changes or reacting to changes based on the issues or problems that the project begins to face. So that will be the good time when changes should happen in your project. The change control process, these are some of the steps. We have the request for a change, the analysis of the request, an approval, we incorporate those changes, and then we communicate. Here's a flowchart that explains a little bit that process. We begin by a request for change. It's better if this request is a formal process or a formal request, something that comes in writing, rather than something that's done over the phone or via email. The idea is that we need to be able to have some documentation that can help us then use that information as we make progress during this process. There is a step of analysis of the request, and that's analysis. We see how long it's going to take us, how much it's going to cost us. Then the approval of those changes, depending on the different levels of authority that exist within the project and the organization, different people will take roles in approving. Then the approval, if it's negative, then we need to inform the group of people that requested it and the reasons why it was denied. If it's approved, then we incorporate those changes in the plans and we communicate the different people who are involved in that plan or in that area about those changes. Who can request changes? Where we have external stakeholders that include beneficiaries, people from the government if the project is involved with the government, partners, vendors. They can contribute with ideas and suggestions about changes that can improve the project. We also have internal stakeholders. We include in that area the donor, finance unit, the department in the organization, the management, steering committee, the project manager, and the project team. They all can contribute with ideas and suggestions based on the information they have, based on the analysis they do on the conditions in the project and the changes they see. They will find opportunities and they will send or recommend those changes to the project. One of the tools that is used in this process is the request for changes. This is a simple form. Here's a basic example where we list the project name, we add a request number, a date of the request. This will be the area that is filled by the person or groups requesting the change. They will set up a priority, and that may even include a date when the change will be needed. the name of the originator, a description of the change, and a justification of the change. This is an important area because that is where we know why it's important for the project to make that change. The second part of the form is usually done either filled by the project manager or somebody in the project team, where there is an analysis of that request and the impact on either the scope, the schedule, the budget, or any other area. There will be a description of what it means that change to the project constraints. Then there's going to be an area for the decision, a date for the decision, and approval signatures. Depending on the type of request, some organizations or projects might want to have this as a formal document because it could be used as an audit documentation when the changes are significant and we need to make sure that we have the right approvals for changes in the project. The justification for changes, that is an important component of the information that is needed, is that all the requests for changes should include a justification. It's asking how the project will benefit from the change. And there are two areas we look at that. One is called reactive change, meaning that we are responding to a problem. The team, the project manager, somebody saw that there is a problem, then we need to react, we need to make changes to our plans. The other one is proactive change, is that we identify a potential problem or an opportunity to improve the project in the future. So we're asking for corrections and changes before we get to that point and becomes even difficult to manage. Remember that the impact and the cost, the impact is higher and the cost is lower when we are ahead in the project in the early stages. So look at those justifications and try to see how they are worded so that they can explain in detail why it's needed, and then based on that information they can make a decision. One of the tools that is used is the change control log. The log is a way to list all the requests by first number, the date of the request, a description of the change. That's where we also included the justification. The impact of the change, that is part of the analysis, what that change will mean in terms of scope, schedule, budget, the requested by the person or the group, the date when the decision is needed. This is important because some of these changes are, in many cases, are time constrained. That if we don't make that change at a specific time, there could be problems. Space also for the decision and some notes so that we know why the change was either approved or not approved, or whatever information is needed in that decision. The colors then can be used also to track and filter the information that we have. Green when it's approved, no when it's denied, and yellow when it's pending. The log is also a tool that can, as we start getting more and more items into the log, that it can help the project manager define those issues or those changes that are taking longer than what was planned. And based on that information, looking at those items that are still pending and looking at the dates that were required to have a decision, it's a good tool to look at and try to get some feedback, trying to find out why this change is taking so much time, and then maybe even use that as a way to escalate the decision. The impact of change, that's the analysis of the overall impact of the project. Usually we look at the constraints, the scope, schedule, and quality, and our triangle, because that's going to be areas that are going to be most impacted by the change. In some other type of projects or other areas that we also look at the impact include risk and legal. The approval of the changes, level of the impact of the project, and the level of authority to approve the changes. That means that we have a level of different levels of authority in the project or in the organization that, depending on the impact to the project, the amount of resources that are needed, they will need to approve it. We have the change control board. We also have the donor, then the steering committee, including the sponsor, and then the project manager. Again, it all depends on the level of authority that exists from low to high, that they can make those approval of the changes. The project manager sometimes, depending on the amount of change that will mean, he will be able to approve most of the small changes. But if those changes require additional cost or additional time, then you will need to get higher into that scale to get the right approval and the addition of the whatever additional resources are needed to implement that change. Once we have all those change approved, then we incorporate those changes in the plans. We make sure that all the core plans are now with the changes, and even if there is any need to also make changes in our support plans. Once we get all those changes into the plans, we communicate the changes to all the people who are affected by those changes, so they are able to work on the new plans and they are able to incorporate the recommendations and the changes needed for the project.